Hey there, and welcome into another episode of the Route 1 Rundown. If you eat, sleep, and breathe Maryland basketball, then this is the place for you. I'm your host, Steve Gorgie, and I'm thrilled to be back to talk some Terps. But before I dive into everything going on in College Park, just a reminder that this show is on YouTube and part of the Department of Hoops, a DMV media network. So if you're listening to the show, but you want to be watching it, you got to go and check it out on YouTube. That's youtube.com/@Department of Hoops. If you love local basketball, hit that subscribe button and hit that like button because you are going to love the Department of Hoops. And you know what else I would be hitting the like button on today if I could? The fact that Maryland is now number 18 in the net rankings, 17-5 overall, 7-4 in the Big Ten, and for the moment anyway, alone in fourth place in the Big Ten standings, a half game ahead of Illinois, Wisconsin, and UCLA, teams that Maryland has now all beaten this season after that 76-68 home win over the Badgers last night. I'd be smashing the like button on that if I could, because Maryland is red hot right now. That's 4 in a row for the Terps, and what a difference 2 weeks makes. Legitimately, 2 weeks ago, Maryland lost to Northwestern, and for many people, it seemed like the season was over. And I did the episode where I said, why can't Maryland win on the road? Why can't they get these road wins? Everything has changed over the last 2 weeks. And maybe things weren't as bad as they seemed at the time. I was somebody that I felt like I have been pretty confident and positive about this team throughout the season. There's so many pieces. I've talked about it ad nauseum, what I like about this team. And I got to give so much credit to Kevin Willard and the leadership on that team. Julian Reese, I think the clear senior leader on that team, for not letting the team slip too far away and going on this 4-game winning streak. So Maryland gets that win last night over Wisconsin. The student section at Xfinity Center, absolutely rocking. It was a really, really good crowd. I would say it was a great student crowd. It was a good, not great, home crowd in general. There's more there. There's certainly more there. But it was a great win against a really solid Wisconsin Badgers team. And I thought the game changed in a couple places. It really stood out to me. Maryland was in this stretch, down 42-36 at the 16-12 mark of the second half after John Blackwell hit a three. So Maryland hits a three, Maryland calls a timeout right after that, and after the timeout, Selton Miguel goes out and hits a big three to keep the game from slipping away. Because at the moment, it felt like that was a moment where it could slip away a little bit. And then immediately, or then right after that, Julian Reese, I thought, had some really good sequences. He had a big block. He was taking it at Winter inside with Stephen Crowell out of the game. And that's something that I think we've seen a lot of growth and development in with Julian Reese. When he has that mismatch, he is going to be aggressive. He is going to take it at the guy he feels like he has the mismatch on. So I thought it was a great job by Julian Reese there. But the moment where I really thought the game changed was down 5, 48-43, 11 minutes to go. And what happens next? Well, Deshaun Harris-Smith hits an open three. Deshaun Harris-Smith is a guy who has really struggled offensively over his year and a half, almost 2 years as a Terp. I mean, Deshaun Harris-Smith is a guy who started the season in the starting lineup, but he's scoring less than 4 points per game. He's shooting under 22% from beyond the arc. He was such a decorated high school player, and it's been, I think, it's been hard for him where he hasn't quite lived up to the expectations that were placed upon him. But you got to give credit to a guy like Deshaun Harris-Smith, who even getting moved to the bench is willing to play his role and take advantage of the minutes he's given. He's always been a great defender. He plays hard on defense every night, and he gets an opportunity last night coming off the bench with an open three. He had just missed a shot the sequence before, the possession before, and he hits this three, and you could see the excitement on his face and the excitement for on his teammates' faces for him in that big moment in that game. So he hits that three, cuts it to a 2-point game. Then the next offensive possession, Derek Queen gets double teamed. Well, he kicks it out to Gillespie for a three. Great ball movement by Derek Queen. I'm always talking about all the things that Derek Queen does well. It's not just get you in the post and put a post move on you. It's his ability to see the court. It's his ability to handle the ball. Right there on that possession, you saw what Derek Queen can do when he's doubled. The way he can pass the ball, the way he can get it to the open guy. And then on the next possession, Rodney Rice hits a corner three. Again, everybody collapses on Derek Queen. You can see like four Wisconsin defenders. They're all trying to converge on Derek Queen. Well, again, great vision by him. He passes it out to Deshaun Harris-Smith. And Deshaun Harris-Smith, who had just hit a big three, right? He's feeling really confident. I think a lot of players in this situation would have just taken the shot, taken the three. What does he do? He passes it to an even more open Rodney Rice in the corner. Bang, 9-0 run. Wisconsin calls a timeout. But it doesn't stop there, right? Because a lot of times that can stem the tide. That timeout can stop the momentum. But Wisconsin takes a timeout. Out of the timeout, Maryland has a great defensive possession. They double Stephen Crow. Blackwell has to take a really tough three over a nearly 7-foot Derek Queen. Queen runs the court. They find him. I think it was Gillespie found him for a layup. He has a great finish. That's an 11-0 Maryland run. The Terps go up 54-48. So in the span of about 2.5 minutes, they turned it from a 5-point deficit to a 6-point lead. And I thought that was the moment where the game absolutely changed. There was one more moment, though, because it wasn't quite done yet. Wisconsin battled back after that point. Wisconsin had really a nice fight back there to cut it to 1 with just under 6 minutes to play. With 5:53 to play, Winter beats everybody down the court and gets a layup. Not a great defensive possession there for the Terps, but it's 57-56 Maryland with 5:53 to play. Well, from that point forward, Maryland was fantastic defensively. Absolutely fantastic. They held Wisconsin to just 2 made field goals from that point forward. Both were John Tonje threes, and he had a fantastic game. He's a really special player. I live very, very impressed by that, by John Tonje and what he can do, and I think he's certainly an NBA kind of player. But Maryland locked down defensively after that point. Just 2 made field goals for the Badgers from that point forward, and that was the difference in the ball game. The very next possession, Stephen Crow travels. I think it was forced in part by the double of Julian Reese and Derek Queen. Then Reese goes down and gets an and one. Then a couple minutes later, Reese gets a really huge rebound. Julian Reese, to me, he is just the life force of this team. He is clearly the leader of this team, and he has been so impressive to me this season, and I thought he was a huge part of why they locked down defensively in those last 6 minutes. I thought they did a really nice job switching everything as well. I thought they did a great job with their communication. I thought Deshaun Harris-Smith did a great job between having to defend John Blackwell and John Tonje. Again, I can't give enough credit to him coming off the bench, playing hard. It's really easy for a guy like Deshaun Harris-Smith to pout, to say, I don't want to be here anymore. And maybe he does end up transferring. Maybe he sticks around. Who knows? But he has made the most of the minutes he has been given. And he's a huge reason why Maryland won that game last night. And that takes me to my biggest takeaway from this game, and really these last 3 games. It's that this Maryland team is so special because of their versatility. Last night you had a game where Deshaun Harris-Smith comes off the bench and plays a huge role in that win for the Terps, both hitting that huge 3 and playing great defense. But you also saw every single Maryland starter score in double figures. Let me repeat that. All 5 Maryland starters hit double figures. That's a full team effort. And what makes that so special is that you look at the previous 2 wins. You look at the Indiana win, where it was so guard dominated, so guard heavy. Those 3 transfer guards were the star. They scored 56 points combined. Then you go back a game before that, and that thrashing of Illinois. Well, 62 points in the paint for Maryland in that game. Julian Reese, the absolute star in that game, 27 points for him. Derek Queen adds 25. There's so many different ways for this Maryland team to beat you. One night it might be the the bigs. One night it might be the guards. One night everybody might chip in a little bit. And I thought it was so impressive for Maryland to win this game last night on a night where Jacoby Gillespie, I just did a whole thing earlier this week about how Jacoby Gillespie is playing himself into the first team all Big Ten conversation. I still firmly believe that. But he didn't have his best last night. He put up 16 points, but it wasn't an efficient 16 points. He wasn't shooting the ball quite like he had been. I thought he had a good night, not a great night. And to be able to win when Jacoby Gillespie's not having a great night, and Derek Queen, who still puts up a double-double, 12 points, 12 rebounds, but goes 3 for 14 from the field, when those two guys are going to combine 7 of 27 from the field, and you're still able to beat a top 20 Wisconsin team, you are a very good basketball team. You have a ton of different ways you can win. And it's not just the number of different guys who can beat you, but it's the ways in which they can beat you. It's how Maryland can win these games. Because over the last 3 games, we've seen Maryland play an 80-possession game against Illinois that was up and down the court. Maryland was great forcing turnovers, getting out on the break in that game, a ton of forced turnovers, a ton of fast break points in that game. Maryland had 27 points off turnovers in that game, 17 fast break points in that game. And I have been adamant, this Maryland team has to force turnovers. They really need to force turnovers because it enables them to get stops, obviously, but also it allows them to get out in transition and get easy baskets. I have been adamant on that. 20% turnover rate is the magic number for me. Well, last night, Maryland didn't come anywhere close, really, to that 20% turnover rate. It was just under 15%. There was not a ton of live ball turnovers in that game, but Maryland did a really nice job defensively on Wisconsin, and they held Wisconsin to, I want to make sure I get the right number here. I think they were just about, they were 1 point per possession on the nose. 68 points in 68 possessions. Really nice job for a Wisconsin team that's top 10 nationally in offensive efficiency rating on KenPom. This is a really good, efficient Wisconsin basketball team. And to hold them to just 1 point per possession when they weren't even forcing turnovers speaks volumes to me about this Maryland team and the different ways that they can win games. Last night, as far as points off turnovers and fast break points go, there were not a lot of them for Maryland. Not a lot of them at all. 9 fast break points for the Terps, 11 points off turnovers. That was not how they won that game. And to see them win these games in so many different ways is what makes me so excited about this Maryland team, which is why I continue to say this is the Maryland team I think is best equipped to make a deep March Madness run since the 2010 team that got knocked out by Michigan State. I think this team is the best Maryland team since then. And you know what? If you look back at season by season, you look back at where these teams have finished in KenPom, which I think is, I value KenPom greatly. I think it's a great resource. I think these computer numbers are important to look at. They're just simply a measure of efficiency, right? There's only 2 teams that really compare. It's that 2010 team, finished the year 13th in KenPom, and the 2020 team under Mark Turgeon that finished 11th in KenPom. And of course, that's the year the tournament was canceled. This Maryland team right here is number 20 at this moment in KenPom. This Maryland team right here, I think, is the closest to those 2 teams that we've seen. I put them right there with those 2 teams, and it's because of the versatility. It's because of the different ways they can beat you. It's because they can win different styles of games. It's because they can have a different guy beat you every night. It's because Julian Reese can be Naismith Player of the Week one week, and then you can have Jacoby Gillespie going for 18.5 points over a 6-game stretch. You can have a Deshaun Harris-Smith coming off the bench to lock down guys like Tanjay and Blackwell and also add a big 3. This Maryland team is versatile, and that's why I continue to be so optimistic about it. So what's next for the Terps? Because this is a huge deal. They're not, 11 games into the conference season, 7-4. Now they have this full week off. They are off for an entire week, and a lot has been made about Maryland's schedule and the travel, and I think justifiably so, because I think they've had a really hard schedule, a really hard January. Well, they are off until next February, or until next Thursday, when they play Ohio State on February 6th on the road. There's a 9-game sprint coming down the stretch here. And Maryland, which does now sit at number 18 in the net rankings, and don't worry about the human polls. Maryland's not ranked in the human polls right now. Who cares? It doesn't matter. The committee is looking at the net, and Maryland is now 18 in the net. They're 4-4 in quad 1 games, 3-1 in quad 2 games. That's 7-5 combined. They have a very similar resume to a team like a Michigan, for example. Michigan, number 20 in the most recent net ratings, 3-2 in quad 1 games, 3-2 in quad 1 games, 4-3 in quad 2 games. They're 7-5 in quad 1 and 2 games. Maryland, also 7-5 in quad 1 and 2 games. That's a very similar resume. And I want to take a quick look here and see where Michigan was in a lot of these most recent brackets. Because Michigan, when you look at bracketmatrix.com, unbelievable website, aggregates all the different bracketologies out there. And I still do think in January, late January, still a little early for bracketology. Definitely start diving into it a lot more deeply here once we hit February. But Michigan was basically a consensus 5 seed. Their average seeding among all these brackets, and they were in 86 of 86 brackets, was a 5.55 seed. That's Maryland's resume right now, essentially. And Maryland, down the stretch of these last 9 games here, sitting alone for the moment in 4th place in the Big Ten, I think Maryland can be looking at a 3-4-5 seed. I think that should be the aspiration for Maryland down the stretch, is a 3-4-5 seed, something in that range. Maryland has 5 games remaining at home, 4 on the road, and I think the aspirationally, the goal should be for Maryland to go 7-2. That would put them at 14-6 in conference play, and that would give them a resume. And I tweeted this out actually earlier this week. I think it was on Monday. I tweeted this out, Gorgon Sports. That's my handle across all social media channels, so make sure you're following me there. But that would give Maryland a resume as far as the quad 1 wins are concerned, as far as the number of conference wins. That would give them a resume that would be pretty similar to a team like Illinois last year, who went out and won the Big Ten tournament as well and got a 3 seed. So why can't Maryland go out and get a 3 seed? Why can't Maryland go out the rest of the way and get a protected seed, a seed that they can advance with, that they can win with, that they can get to a Sweet 16 and an Elite 8 with? There's going to be a lot more to talk about as far as what to expect down the stretch, what to watch for down the stretch. Bottom line is Maryland is positioned for a really fun February and hopefully a really fun March. But this is a team that has all of its goals in front of it. Everything that they could possibly want to accomplish is on the table. And I'll leave you with one more thing about why I'm so optimistic about this Maryland team, why I think this Maryland team is very good, is very capable, can make this deep March run. You look at the teams right now that have both an offensive and defensive efficiency in the top 25. You look at those teams. There's only 10 of them in the country. 10 teams in the country have an offensive and defensive efficiency in the top 25. Maryland's one of those 10 teams. And I kind of did this live on the show earlier this week, trying to go through it. But after last night's games, after the January 29th games, there are 10 teams that fit that criteria. Houston, Auburn, Duke, Florida, Iowa State, Purdue, Illinois, Marquette, Michigan State, and Maryland. Tell me that's not great company to be in. Tell me that doesn't look like the profile of a team that can get to a Sweet 16, of a team that could win the Big Ten tournament, of a team that could get a 3 seed, a 4 seed, a team that would be scary as all get out to play in the NCAA tournament. Tell me Maryland doesn't have that kind of profile. And I think the fact that they're top 25 on both the offensive and defensive end speaks volumes to that versatility I was talking about, to why they can be so scary. It's because they can win in so many different ways. It's because they can win a grinded out game. They can win an up and down game. They can bury you from deep. And we got to talk about that here for a second, because Maryland, the biggest question coming into the season was the three-point shooting, which was atrocious last year. One of the worst three-point shooting teams in the country a season ago. Ranked 347th in the country a season ago. Shot under 29% as a team. This season, they're 41st in the country, just over 37% as a team. And you have these guys in Selton Miguel, in Rodney Rice, in Jacoby Gillespie, who can shoot it from anywhere. If you give them space, they can bury you. And that's what I think makes Maryland so exciting, because if there's a lapse on the defensive end, they can maybe cover that up with great three-point shooting. If the shots aren't falling from outside, you have an all-everything freshman in Derek Queen and a fourth-year senior who's been around the block a time or two, who was just the Naismith Player of the Week, who is saying to his teammates as the leader of the team time and time again, give me the ball, I want it, in Julian Reese. You can get the ball to them. That, to me, is what makes Maryland so exciting. Now, you've heard my thoughts on this game. I've talked a lot about this game. But next up, I have a special guest, because I'm going to be joined here by Darius Brockett. He was there at Xfinity Center last night covering the game. Make sure you are following Darius on social media. You can follow him at Brockett Media on Twitter, on TikTok, Instagram. Follow him everywhere. He's doing great stuff. He's also one of the producers over at College Sports Radio on Sirius XM Channel 84. He's one of the producers on Dusty and Danny in the Morning, one of my favorite college sports radio shows out there. So make sure you're following him, because he is going to join me momentarily here, and we are going to get his thoughts on what he saw last night at Xfinity Center, what he's seen out of this Maryland team, and what he thinks about them going forward. Stay right here. This is the Route 1 Rundown. Welcome back to the Route 1 Rundown. I'm excited to be joined by my next guest, Darius Brockett. You can find him all across the internet, across all social media platforms at Brockett Media. He's been covering the Terps a bunch this season, both men's and women's, but that's far from all he does. He does college football, NFL draft, and NFL content. He's also one of the producers over on SiriusXM College Sports Radio Channel 84, working on Dusty and Danny in the Morning and College Sports Saturday. He's one of my favorite people to talk sports with, and I'm pretty sure he never sleeps. Darius, what's going on, man?
I am tired, as you speak of a guy who never sleeps. Last night, getting home at 10:30, then having to get up at 3:45 to leave out the house at 4 to be ready for Dusty and Danny at 6 o'clock. So, sleepy, but I am pushing through.
But that game last night, Maryland 76-68 win, that had to keep you a little bit energized on the ride home, because that was an exciting one. What was your biggest takeaway from it?
Gritty defense. You know, like, Maryland is known for its defense as of late, like creating turnovers, but they've never had to be gritty. And you match it up with a Wisconsin team that is ranked, that a lot of people, if you don't watch the games throughout the week or day to day, you would think that's like an easy runaway. But they matched up very similar in terms of style of play, and they matched up very similar on the stat sheet, where Maryland had, 38 rebounds, Wisconsin had about 36, so it's very even match. But having to be gritty on the defensive end, where it's not just getting turnovers, but it was forcing aired shots, it was forcing ball handlers to pick up their dribble early. It was just like, we're going to play physical, tough defense, we'll match a switch, and we'll double the paint if we need to. And that was just something that I haven't seen from this Maryland team all season, and it was actually quite refreshing to see.
What did you think about the way they defended John Tonje, who had a really good first half, got in a little bit of foul trouble, and his counterpart, John Blackwell, who's capable of going off at any moment, he also got in foul trouble early in that game, 2 fouls in the first half. But what did you think about the way they defended those two guys? Because I already did about 15, 20 minutes of this show before you hopped on, and I talked about how impressed I was with Deshaun Harris-Smith and the way he was able to come off the bench, take advantage of his moments. Of course, he hit that big three, but I was really impressed with the way that he was able to defend those two guys, especially in the second half. I thought he was a difference maker. What did you think of the way they defended them?
I think they did a very great job, especially like the first half. They looked like a team that didn't know how to play defense at first, where John Tonje was just drive, pull up mid range, open three. Oh, I'm gonna get to the lane. Like he could score in any way that he wanted, but Maryland's defense and like you said, the bench coming in was way more active on the defensive side, where usually Maryland's bench has like very good help on the scoring end. But then like even Gapari when he stepped in and he has to fill in for Derek Queen or Juju Reese, like that defense as a whole, they found a way to shrink the floor, but without sacrificing so much on just 1 to 2 players. So that's probably the most impressive part out of that defense. Like you said, having your bench to come in now as to be, usually they offer the bench points or the second chance points to now being, oh, our role is just to play freaking defense. And that's what they did.
So you mentioned Juju Reese there, and he's a guy who is in his 4th year here in College Park. Last week, he was named the Naismith National Player of the Week. He's a guy who, to me, he's improved in every facet of his game over the course of 4 years. Last year, he was not a good free throw shooter at all, 53%. This year, over 80%, 95% from the line over the last 5 games. Last season, and really in his first 3 seasons, fouls were constantly a problem. He's only fouled out twice this season. He had a really nice night last night on a night where Derek Queen wasn't quite on his offensive game. Reese puts up 14 points in that win, and there were some times where he was going at Stephen Crow and Winter when Crow was out, and it felt like he was demanding the ball and kind of saying at times, get on my back, I can carry this team. What do you think? I want to look a little more big picture here. What do you think of Julian Reese's legacy and what he's building this season at Maryland? Because to me, he's a guy that deserves a lot of credit for he comes in as a freshman, right? Mark Turgeon recruits him. Well, less than 10 games into that season, Mark Turgeon's no longer Maryland's coach. He sticks around when Kevin Willard comes in, has a really nice sophomore season. But Grant Billmeyer, the big man coach, leaves to take a head coaching job. So his main position coach leaves. Last season, Maryland does not have a very good year. He doesn't have a great year. He could have gone. I think there's a lot of places in the country he could have gone this past offseason that would have given him a good bit of money to play on a contender, and he chose to stick around in College Park for a 4th year. And I feel like he's really been a leader on this team, especially with a talented, I didn't even mention the fact that he had a talented big, a 5-star big in Derek Queen coming in, who a lot of people would say, like, he's coming to take my job. It doesn't seem like Julian Reese has looked at it that way. It looks like he's taken on more of a leadership role and a mentor role to Derek Queen. I think they played really well together. I've been really impressed by what Julian Reese has done and the way he's grown and developed and been a leader on this team. What do you think of his legacy at Maryland and what he's building right now?
So I think we first off have to give all props to Coach Willard. Like you step in this situation, like you said, you lose your head coach, you lose your positions coach, and then Coach Willard is the guy who's keeping him in check. He's talking to him, building that relationship, and letting him know, like, hey, we still need you. Don't let all this other talent around you think that we don't need you. You're still going to be here. But then also, Julian Reese, like, this is also a testament to your maturity. Like, you understand almost professional, like, basketball, where, hey, you may not be the star of the show, but you are a key focal point where, and the only way I can explain this is for the listeners who may not always watch college basketball. From an NBA term, Manu Ginobili, he's had to play off the bench. He's had to start. You may not be the first guy that you name of as like an all-time Spur out of the list of histories, but you're going to mention him at some point. And that's what Julian Reese's role has become. He may not be the most loudest guy. He may not be the vocal leader, but he shows it with his actions, but he also brings the team together. He's not going to be loud. He's not a rah-rah guy, but he's definitely very calm. He knows how to play the game of basketball. He knows his role, and that's what you need on a team like that, of a very talented Maryland team that has come along lately, winning the last 4 straight, where you just need a guy who's like, hey, I get boards. I may score a little bit, but there's going to come moments where the ball needs to come to me, but also my job is to make sure everyone else is okay. And he's been very mature in that standstill of knowing, like, hey, I understand what I have to do. I could have gone somewhere else. Coach Willard has told me what my role was. Like, that's a great relationship to have between player and coach of, like, you're my guy. You may not be my number 1. Hell, you may not even be my 2 or 3, but you are my guy. And that's a trust that you can't break in any form of sports.
I couldn't agree more, and I think it's a huge part, to your point, why they've been able to win these last 4 games. And, look, you look back 2 weeks ago, it's a very different atmosphere, a very different vibe around this Maryland team. They're coming off this last-second loss to Northwestern, and all over the internet that day, they're sitting at 3-4 in the conference. Everybody's asking, why can't they win on the road? Why can't this team go on the road and get a win? They, I believe at the time, were 0-4 in quad 1 games. Now, just 2 weeks later, they're on a 4-game win streak. They've win 2 road games. They're 4-4 in quad 1 games. They're now up to number 18 in the net rankings, and you're looking at this team as a team that could maybe go out and get a 3, 4, 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. So what are your expectations for this team the rest of the season?
My expectations is to stay the course of where they are. I don't know if they can win the Big Ten championship game yet. I know there's still a lot more building this roster has to do, especially as the season goes on. They've had guys who played a lot of minutes. Then they've had guys who don't play any minutes. They've had injuries. They've had guys who show up to be the guy. Like Jacoby Gillespie is one of those players that you said it, and I remember seeing a video where he's like, we should talk about him as an all Big Ten player at some point. He's definitely become that. Transfer player, plays hard. He's actually become a very key piece as a guard in that role. Like, it wasn't just, he could play make. He can score at the 3-point line. He had that game where he scored 1,000 career points, and it was a very game-cinching shot at halftime to go to half in that game. I want to say it was against Indiana, if I can remember correctly.
I think it was the Nebraska game. That was the game that was giving me shades of Melo Trimble before the half.
Step back, pull 3, and Coach Willard gives him the confidence, right? And then you have to talk about the other players like Selton Miguel. He's been very active on the 3-point line. They have the shooters around the 2 bigs, and they have the bigs that can compete with almost anybody in the country. I think as the season goes on, you're sitting now, 4th place in the Big Ten. You're definitely in the prime spot to play for a Big Ten championship when that tournament time comes. I could see this team on any given week, any given day. I believe this team can be an Elite 8 team. This can be an Elite 8, maybe a Sweet 16 Elite 8 team because the roster is so rich in talent, and we're starting to see the depth. Like I said, Gapari, he has played a little bit. Geronimo has played. And now we're starting to see Jay Young, who may not always contribute on the offensive end, but we're starting to see the depth of this Maryland team where it's something that we have to consider, where not every team in the country has the depth like this, where they lean on maybe 3 guys on the bench and then that's it. Or they lean on 2. Where this team will, if they need to, they'll go 8, 9 deep just so they can figure it out.
I see the same thing you do, and I talked about it again. I recorded about 20 minutes before you jumped on with us, and I talked about the same thing, the versatility of this team. There's so many guys that can beat you in so many different ways. One night it might be the front court. One night it may be the back court. One night it might be the guys coming off the bench to give you big minutes. I mean, last night all 5 starters hit double digits. I mean, that's how many teams in the country can do that?
And then we have to talk about this. The bigs alone did damage cleaning up the boards. They combined for double-digit boards. I know separately Queen has 12 boards, and then Juju, he has 9 or 7. So combining for about double-digit boards, you're looking at a group of guys on that starting 5 where anybody's night could be the hot streak night, right? Where 5 guys are in double digits. Well, if you get a game like that and you get the defensive performance that we've seen in that second half, they could shut out almost anybody in the Big Ten.
You talk about the rebounding. It's not like Wisconsin is a mid-major team that's playing a 6'8" guy at center. They have Winter there, who's a 7, close to a 7-footer. I think he's 6'11". And then, of course, Stephen Crowell, their starter at the 5, is a 7-footer, a guy that's been in the Big Ten for 5 years now. These are guys that
veteran roster,
they have
too.
Size. Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of right now, it's all peaches and roses for Maryland, right? They're on this 4-game win streak. But if there is a fatal flaw for this team, what do you think it is?
The fatal flaw that I see for this Maryland team going forward is the bigs, right? You live and die with these bigs. You have to either find a way to get them involved. There's been moments where Derek Queen isn't all that active on the offensive end, and you can kind of see him mentally check out of it on the defensive side of the ball. or Juju if he's not getting the touches that he would want, because it's not like he needs all these touches, but the touches that he want, you have to maintain the bigs, right? Win down low. In this game of basketball now, everyone's going outside in. If Maryland can continue to play inside out, they can get the shooters open. We've seen games time after time after time, and Coach Willard has gone with the analytics of saying, hey, I'd rather you chuck up a three than turn the ball over. So you can live with all the threes in the world, but if your bigs aren't able to perform in the paint on the offensive end, especially on the mismatches when they get those switches, they will need help going forward. So if you keep the bigs involved, Maryland will do a lot more damage than what we expect already now. So that's probably the only way I could see this team truly slipping up, where they have games where the bigs just are irrelevant, like Derek Queen in single-digit points, Juju Reese in single-digit points. You can't have that. One of the two have to be in double digits.
No, I think that's a good point, and I think it is something that we've seen at time, and it's something that when you do rely on bigs, right? It's not like a guard where the guard has the ball in their hands from the second it's inbounded, right? You have to find a way to get them the ball just logistically, and sometimes
just a little touch pass over top.
Sometimes that has been hard for Maryland, right? Like there are moments where I don't know if they're not looking for it as much, because when you do have scorers, like a lot of these guys, Rodney Rice, wired to score. Selton Miguel, wired to score. Jacoby Gillespie, wired to score. So I don't know if it's a mindset or it's the way that other teams are playing Maryland at times, where like it is hard to get those bigs the ball. But yeah, that I definitely see that as, that could be a problem if you're not getting them involved. If they're not involved in the game, if they're not getting those touches, that could be a problem. The other thing I see, and I'm curious to get your take on this, is I feel like a team that is maybe a little bit more of a small ball team, a team that is playing like a stretch five, a guy who can step out and hit the three. I could see that being a challenge for Maryland defensively. I look at like a team like Marquette, for example, who Maryland played earlier this season, and they, at any given moment, they have five guys on the court that can all shoot it. They have David Joplin at the 4 and Ben Gold at the 5, who are guys that will not hesitate to step out and shoot the 3. I think, in fact, Joplin leads that team as their 4 in three-point field goal attempts. Ben Gold shot over 100 threes on the year, just under 38% three-point shooter. And that's the kind of team that I could see giving Maryland a little bit of trouble, just because when you're playing those two bigs with Reese and Queen, I have some questions about how they would match up with a team like that. Do you see that as an issue at all?
Yes, I see it as an issue, but I don't see it as an issue for Juju. I more so see it as an issue for Derek, because we haven't seen Derek play a lot of perimeter-based basketball. He usually is in the paint. He usually is always down on the block as a defender. And that's usually when you see those matchups where you see Tafari Gaspari come in for Juju or come in for Derek. It's someone who can play the 4-5 role, but also keep the defense stretched out, so where you play those games against Marquette and you can be like, okay, we have at least one guy who can secure us a board, where they still need that advantage, because they are one of the best rebounding teams in the country and one of the best rebounding teams in the Big Ten. They're, second or third in rebounding? So you need those type of things. So that definitely can be a mismatch, but I think that's where it becomes a game of matchups, and we're starting to see Geronimo get a little bit more playing time, and Kevin Willard's going to experiment with the lineups. As much as he has like that core 5 set, when he gets under those 5 minutes, he's definitely going to experiment probably in the top 10, that top 4, maybe in the top 8 of that first half, just to see where his defense is and where he can gauge where everyone is at. But definitely a team like Marquette can do a lot of damage, which they did. So it's something he keeps in his back pocket for sure.
Yeah, I think Willard's done actually a nice job kind of working into Tafari Gaspari into the lineup, separating Queen and Reese at times, but then bringing them back together, right? When the Warriors always had that death lineup. Well, this is a little bit different version of a death lineup, because I'm like, I don't know how many teams can defend both of those guys and those 3 guards all on the court together with what they bring to the table. So I think Willard's actually done a very nice job kind of working Gaspari in at times for defensive purposes. He even hit a big 3 last night. Jordan Geronimo getting healthy. He's had big moments moments over the past, over this 4-game win streak here. I think that's something, again, it just goes back to Maryland's versatility, and I think what makes this team special and what can make them a really challenging out once you get to March here. Last question here for you, Darius, before we wrap up. Okay, so Maryland has a week off here, a much-needed week off, but then they get back on the road. They go to Columbus. They play Ohio State, an Ohio State team that they really took it to at Xfinity Center earlier this season. Maryland's won 2 games on the road now, but have they truly figured out this whole road thing?
No. And the only reason why I say no is, like you said, you've won 2 games. That means a lot, especially in the Big Ten. This type of atmosphere in this crowd, especially for even a home game that we experienced last night at that Gold Rush, that's a crowd you're going to get every Big Ten road game. You have to be able to balance your emotions. You have to be able to balance your play. You have to be able to manage yourself. Maryland got into a lot of foul trouble in some of those road games. They have to figure out a balance. And can they handle it? Yeah. Will they handle it? Time will tell. And also, we got to remember, this team is not young, but it's not overly mature either. Like, you have a great collection of guys. You have freshmen, you have sophomores, you have juniors, you have seniors, you even have a 5th year that all get playing time. So it's just finding a way for everyone to keep each other in check rather than living in the moment of, oh, look at this venue that I'm playing in. So they can definitely do it, especially Maryland being a versatile team. Like I said, they won with the bigs, as we saw yesterday. They won with the outside shot. They've even now we've seen win with defense. So they can get it all done in multiple ways. It's just put it all together and play complete basketball. Don't start slow like they did against Wisconsin last night. And that means a lot more on the road than it does at home. Because if you start slow on the road, that chance of even getting back in your mojo is pretty much non-existent, especially in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I think there are levels to how much you can figure it out in the Big Ten on the road. Because, look, home teams are winning over 62% of Big Ten conference games. It's just the fact of the matter is it's hard to win on the road in a lot of leagues. It's particularly hard to win on the road in this league. Maryland has 4 road games left, 5 at home. I think aspirationally for me, if I'm setting like what would be my goal, my dream for this team, if they're going to get where they want to go, I would say if they could go 7-2 down the stretch, that would be fantastic. I think realistically, like if any Maryland fan would be happy or should be happy with 6-3 down that over that stretch as well. But I would say 7-2 with the road games being
very
at
much
Ohio
realistic.
State, at Nebraska, at Penn State, and at Michigan. Like that would be aspirational to me.
Oh yeah, that's very realistic for any Maryland fan out there that will watch this, will listen to this. What you said is 100% correct. 7-2, that's the sweet spot. 6-3. Very much possible. The team will only go as far as they allow themselves to go. It's not like they're a team that's very limited with skill. So it's all about how far they're willing to go and how much they're willing to put in on the little things. Rebounding is their strong suit, but also getting to the free throw line and creating turnovers has been their strong suit. So lean into what makes them great. They can do whatever they want. This is a tournament team. Now only time will tell how far they will go. Like I said, Sweet 16, Elite 8 is where I can put them. But this next stretch will kind of put it in the conversation of could they be a Final Four team?
I couldn't agree more, and it's going to be fun to watch the rest of the way and find out where they end up. Darius, it's always a pleasure. Again, you can find Darius all across the internet, all across the social media platforms, at Brockett Media. He's talking Terps, he's talking college football, NFL draft. He's talking about it all. He's one of the best. Get some rest, Darius, and we'll talk to you soon.
Hey, man, I'm going to try. Thank you again for having me on. This was very much fun. I would definitely do this again.
Absolutely, we'll do it again soon. All right, that's the show for today. Until next time, this has been the Route 1 Rundown.